Have you ever wondered why sleep feels like both a disappearance and a return? As if the body remains, but the essence of who you are slips into an invisible elsewhere. Not lost, but untraceable. Night after night, you surrender to the unknown, trusting that when morning comes, something within you will realign with flesh, breath, and name. Yet, what if this nightly departure isn't simply rest, but a ritual of relocation? What if sleep is not the end of awareness, but the threshold of another realm? One where consciousness, unbound by identity, explores the quantum terrain beyond the veil. Because in the spaces where the waking mind falls silent, a different kind of vision begins. And it is there, in the electric hush between thoughts, in the quiet pulsing of the dream world, that your true self travels. Not in fantasy, but in physics. The field of infinite potential does not close its doors when the eyes shut. Instead, it opens wider. Every time you sleep, your consciousness surrenders its hold on the constructed world and returns to a place that the ancients once mapped, that mystics whispered about, and that modern science is only beginning to remember. A realm not of stories, but of signals. Not of logic, but of light. If this resonates deep in your spirit, pause now and type, "I remember what they tried to make me forget." Your consciousness is listening, and it's ready to go further. The body you wear is not a prison. It is a conductor. And while you sleep, it does not simply shut down. It tunes out of the linear broadcast of time and taps into the unspoken signals of the field. Brainwaves shift. Beta fades. Alpha slows. Theta opens the gates. And finally, in Delta, in that velvet black of deep, undisturbed rest, the mind steps aside, and the field begins to breathe you. In this sacred stillness, your consciousness is no longer a personality confined to problems. It becomes what it truly is: a frequency, a pulse, a wandering observer, slipping through parallel selves and possible lives, not in fantasy, but in fractal. What the ancient band texts once described as astral or ethereal was never separate from science, only shrouded in the metaphor of mystery. Because the soul's nightly journey was too sacred to be measured, and too powerful to be controlled, and so the knowledge was buried, labeled heresy, burned at the margins, banished from temples, and later forgotten in textbooks. But the physics remain. Quantum coherence does not ask permission from religion or empire. When you sleep, your wave collapses into a different coordinate. The you that wakes up isn't always the same one that laid down. In the unseen hours, when your mind releases the tight grip of identity, your memories begin to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into signal, into pure, malleable possibility. This is not loss. This is rehearsal. This is rehearsal for rebirth. Every night, your ego bows, and the timeless self returns to source. The subconscious begins to reorganize the geometry of your life, not based on what you did, but on what you believe you are. Because while the body sleeps, identity floats, and where it floats, it creates. Some people dream in symbols. Others drift in silence. But all souls who sleep enter the current of the same quantum ocean. An ocean where time folds like paper and events rearrange themselves based on your most emotionally charged thoughts. That's why fear becomes nightmare. That's why guilt loops. That's why love can manifest even in a whisper of sleep. In this state, you are not just a passive witness, you are a silent director, feeding the next day's reality with last night's unconscious command. Consciousness, when unhooked from the brain's beta broadcast, does not vanish. It expands, and in that expansion, you tap into the realm where the observer is no longer separate from the observed, where the boundaries between you and life become translucent. This is the secret the band mystics tried to teach, that the act of witnessing a new identity, especially in sleep, is the first act of creating one. That dreams are not escape, but rehearsal. that consciousness is not contained by hours, but stretched across frequencies. And while the world teaches you to see sleep as a passive act, a shutdown, those who know the truth understand it as a shift, a switch in the dimension of attention. For it is not sleep that makes you rest, but alignment. And when the conscious and subconscious finally speak the same language, your very breath becomes medicine, and your dreams begin to reorganize your destiny. Somewhere inside you, even now, is a self that already remembers this. The quiet inner seer who never sleeps. The silent observer who watches not just the dreams, but the dreamer. And when you touch that awareness, even for a moment, you begin to dissolve the illusion of separation between night and day, between spirit and science, between you and the cosmos. The truth is, you are not the dreamer inside the dream. You are the space in which the dream arises. Consciousness, when left unguarded by thought, begins to ripple across dimensions unseen by waking eyes. And though the mind tries to anchor you in the familiar, the soul remains fluent in the language of light, of archetypes, of frequencies, of forms that have no mass but move mountains. While your physical body lies in stillness, your energetic signature moves, interacts, recalibrates, and remembers. This is not theory, but architecture, the very foundation of how energy reshapes matter. And your sleep is not a pause in that process. It is the most open gate. The band mystics knew that within the theta waves of half-sleep lies the code to unlock memory beyond memory, the memory of being more than human, more than name, story, design. In this suspended state, between waking and deep sleep, consciousness becomes fluid, like light slipping through the cracks of a forgotten temple. It is here, in the unseen corridors of your own mind, that the field of infinite possibility begins to respond, not to what you say, but to what you are being, when the ego is gone and the soul is bare. As you drift through this liminal space, the observer effect begins its silent magic. You are no longer watching reality from behind your eyes. You are interwoven with it. Your unspoken thoughts act like sonar, vibrating outward through the quantum field. And the field listens. It always listens, because it is not separate from you. It is you stretched across time. Whatever identity you unconsciously believe yourself to be during these hours, the universe responds accordingly, collapsing waves into form to match your unseen emotion. It is no coincidence that the most potent transformation occurs not in the striving, but in surrender, not in repetition, but in resonance. The true creator does not force the world to change. They observe differently, and the world reorganizes around that shift. While you sleep, you are granted the greatest freedom from the illusion of effort. No longer caught in the grind of expectation, your consciousness returns to neutrality. And from neutrality, all things are born. The silent observer within you is not passive, it is divine. You may think the unconscious mind is simply memory and repressed emotion, but in reality it is the master conductor of the field. What you are unaware of during the day becomes the author of your experience at night. If your waking thoughts are incoherent, but your subconscious beliefs are strong, the latter will win. That is why true transformation does not begin with motivation. It begins with awareness. And that awareness is most accessible when the mind sleeps and the self becomes sound. Across every culture that remembered the truth before it was erased, Egypt, Vedic India, Sufi Persia, Kabbalistic Israel, there was a shared knowing that during sleep, the soul leaves the physical body and communes with the source. That guidance comes not from outside, but from the within you that already exists in alignment. The mystics called it ascension. The scientists call it coherence. The language changes, but the law remains. Energy follows attention, and attention expands identity. You may not remember every journey, but your cells do. Your frequency does. The you that walks through the next day is always slightly altered by the you that wandered in the night. That is why some mornings you wake with peace, without reason, and others with dread. You are not waking from sleep. You are waking from a frequency. And that frequency carries the residue of who you chose to be when no one was watching. Not even your own mind. What if your dreams weren't random? What if they were maps? What if every strange symbol, every irrational moment, every sudden shift was not chaos, but code? The soul doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in sensation, emotion, archetype, image, and the subconscious, in its sacred language, is constantly delivering keys. The question is never, is the dream real? The question is, which part of me is dreaming it? And in this space, beyond logic, beyond narrative, you begin to meet the versions of yourself that live in other timelines. Not imagination, physics. For every choice you did not make, another self did. And those selves do not die. They ripple, parallel, possible, potent. In the silence of sleep, you brush shoulders with them. And the more aware you become, the more you can pull their frequency into your own, merging the self you are with the self you were always meant to be. To sleep consciously is to wake differently. To surrender with presence is to align your essence with the truth that cannot be taught, only remembered. You are not the body. You are not the dream. You are the dreamer of both. There is a sacred intelligence that awakens when your conscious mind goes quiet. Not a lesser form of thinking, but a higher one that doesn't need words. This intelligence lives in patterns, sensations, pulses of truth that bypass logic entirely. And while you sleep, you are bathed in it. The ancient texts knew this. They described sleep not as absence, but as entry into the great field, the Akasha, the luminous mind of God, where all things exist in blueprint before they emerge in time. This is not metaphor. This is the scaffolding behind reality. The more you release the weight of control, the more this field responds. It is not force that bends reality. It is resonance. And the subconscious mind during sleep becomes the clearest mirror of your resonance. Not what you think you want, but what you've become vibrationally. This is why those who harbor fear but speak of success remain blocked, because in the dream state, only frequency speaks, and the field listens with exquisite precision, giving not to the mask, but to the truth underneath it. What you feel in the dark is what shapes your world in the light. This is the law that made mystics dangerous and empires tremble, because it gives power back to the soul, not the system. If belief shapes the brain, and the brain directs attention, and attention collapses quantum possibility, then sleep becomes your most sovereign hour. It is the one time you are not performing, not proving, just being. And in that being, the deepest truths rise like stars over a silent ocean. During these hours, neural pathways untangle, patterns reset, emotions surface without defense. The trauma that hides behind your words during the day may finally speak in image. The dream where you are running from something or chasing something is not nonsense. It is information, emotional geometry. The unconscious is attempting to show you what your conscious mind refuses to integrate. And the more you ignore this internal language, the louder it becomes. But when you begin to observe with reverence, not fear, not judgment, the dream becomes your teacher. Not a puzzle to decode, but a mirror to recognize. The parts of you that are still afraid, still seeking, still fragmented, and also the parts of you that are free, divine, and whole, for the dream does not lie. It shows you the truth beneath your habits, the shape of your vibration, the trajectory of your timeline. And if you are willing to feel instead of flee, to witness instead of wish, you can shift your entire energetic blueprint by morning. Those who master sleep master the self. They do not use it as escape, but as return, to fall asleep in coherence, where heart and brain pulse in rhythm, where thought and feeling are aligned, is to launch the soul into the quantum field with a map instead of a question. And the field, being infinite and immediate, responds not with delay, but with direction, not with resistance, but with orchestration. Suddenly, synchronicities increase. The path appears, and it feels effortless, because it is. You were never meant to create reality through exhaustion. That was the old paradigm. The new one whispers differently. Sleep deeply, rise aligned, act with presence. Because the one who dreams with intention and walks with coherence commands reality not by effort, but by frequency. Your future self is not waiting on your grind. It is waiting on your harmony. And harmony begins within, not in what you achieve, but in what you allow while the ego sleeps. Allow stillness. Allow integration. Allow the field to rebuild you, not from survival, but from design. The dreams you dismiss may hold the blueprints to the life you've been struggling to manifest. And the moment you stop trying to control them, they begin to guide you. There is a part of you that already knows this. The deeper self, that remains aware even while the body rests. The ancient cultures spoke of this one. The dream walker, the silent knower, the seer who never sleeps. You are not learning to become that presence. You are remembering that you always were. The truth is, your consciousness does not simply drift during sleep. It expands into places the waking mind cannot reach. And there, it touches possibilities that the daytime self has forgotten how to imagine. In the quantum field, time is not linear. Identity is not fixed. Sleep is the invitation into this greater space where the illusion of limitation begins to melt. You are not bound to one version of yourself, not when the mind surrenders and the soul returns to the infinite archive of what could be. Every thought you carry into the moment of sleep becomes a seed in that field, not just of emotion, but of instruction. The universe is not random, it is responsive. It listens, not to your words, but to your coherence. And when you fall asleep in fear, confusion, or guilt, the signal you emit becomes a magnet for timelines that echo that same frequency. But when you enter sleep like a sacred ritual, your consciousness aligns with a different current, and the path of your becoming starts to change. Your dreams are not isolated experiences. They are the echoes of your vibration. They are the symbolic language through which the subconscious reveals the patterns you are repeating and the patterns you are ready to release. Some people dream of falling because their foundation is shaking. Others dream of flying because a higher truth is rising. The dream does not predict, it reflects. And the more you learn to read its mirror, the less life feels like chaos, and the more it feels like guidance. You are not meant to decode these dreams with logic. You are meant to feel their weight in your chest, the temperature of their symbols, the way a certain place or person in the dream made you tremble or weep. That feeling is your subconscious whispering. And the more fluent you become in that inner language, the easier it becomes to realign your conscious beliefs with your deeper truth. For your outer life will always bend to the architecture of your inner world. There is a part of your consciousness that does not sleep. It watches. It waits. It observes every thought you send into the field, not with judgment, but with clarity. This is the silent observer, the highest frequency of self. And it is this part of you that determines the energetic blueprint you carry into the next day. Most people ignore it, but the wise remember. To align with this presence before sleep is to awaken in alignment with divine will, not the fragmented mind. The shift begins the moment you become aware that even in rest, you are creating. Not through control, but through surrender. Not by demanding, but by attuning. And the moment you stop reacting to your emotions and begin to observe them as data, as information, your frequency begins to stabilize. The storms within become messages, not enemies. And in the field of possibility, only the stable signal manifests. When your mind races as you lay down, it's not because you're broken. It's because your soul is trying to reconcile the incoherence you ignored during the day. That tension, that unrest, is not punishment. It is communication. The body may be ready to sleep, but the consciousness is still holding fragments, regret, fear, longing. If you carry these into sleep without awareness, they will shape your trajectory. But if you observe them without clinging, they dissolve into clarity, and clarity is the womb of manifestation. Neuroscience has now proven what the sages knew, that the heart and brain must communicate in harmony to create true coherence. And this harmony, this energetic symmetry, opens a portal during sleep that allows your consciousness to rewire itself. Not through will, but through surrender. Not through striving, but through stillness. The deepest healing happens when you do not force it. It happens when the nervous system enters safety. And safety begins in belief. You do not need to earn rest. You are born of it. You do not need to prove your worth before you're allowed to dream. You were designed to receive while you sleep. The soul does not require exhaustion to evolve. It requires remembrance. And when you allow yourself to feel safe in the unseen begins to rearrange the visible in ways you never imagined. To sleep, as a creator, is to become the author of your unfolding, not through noise, but through still, sacred attention. The dream is not separate from destiny. It is the first draft. The deeper truth is this: your identity is not fixed when you sleep. It is negotiable. And in that fluidity lies immense power. Each night you are given a cosmic reprieve from your own beliefs, a reset of the mental construct that says, "This is who I am." But very few take it. Most carry yesterday's emotions into tonight's dreams, unknowingly reinforcing the same version of self that struggles, fears, and forgets. But the soul, the observing self beyond form, sees the truth that identity is a lens, not a prison. You are not meant to die once. You are meant to die nightly. To the roles, to the ego, to the false urgency that daylight demands. And when you sleep with awareness, that death becomes sacred. The collapse of one identity makes space for the rise of another. This is not just poetry. It is neuroscience. Every memory, every belief, every assumption you hold forms a neural architecture. And in sleep, that structure softens. It can be rewritten, but only if you stop clinging to it. What if the you that wakes tomorrow is not the same you that suffered today? What if your greatest transformation doesn't begin with a goal, but with the decision to release who you think you are before you close your eyes? The quantum field does not cling. It responds to the observer, and the observer is always changing. To know this is to begin mastering reality from the inside out. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the alignment of movement with truth. When your thoughts and feelings are moving in the same direction, that is coherence. When your body sleeps in safety, and your heart sleeps in gratitude, that is coherent. And when coherence is present, the observer within you sends a pure signal to the field. One that reshapes timelines not through effort, but through resonance. This is why miracles often follow peace, not panic. The old world taught you to work harder, to strive longer, to grind even in your dreams. But the sacred path whispers something older, that rest is holy, that surrender is strategy, and that the one who sleeps in trust reshapes worlds in silence. You are not lazy for pausing. You are not weak for releasing. In fact, the stillest beings often carry the deepest power because their frequency speaks where their words do not. While the body resets and the ego dissolves, the subconscious mind begins to cleanse. It does not ask for permission. It operates by rhythm, guided by the patterns you've repeated, the stories you've believed, the symbols you've feared or worshipped. These patterns become the architecture of your dreamscape, and if you do not rewrite them consciously, They become the scaffolding of your waking life. But here is the miracle. You can shift the patterns. You can observe the symbols and detach from the story. You can bless the fear and release the loop. You can enter the theta state, that luminous doorway between sleep and wake, and plant a new belief in the soil of the subconscious. One that says, I am not the trauma. I am the witness. I am not the failure. I am the field that makes all things new. Energy is not just what you emit. It is what you allow. And while you sleep, you are most open, most permeable to the energies that surround and inhabit your field. This is why intention before rest is not ritual, but necessity. To clear your space, to call in peace, to release resentment, to forgive what must be released. Not for their sake, but for your frequency. Because the observer who forgives before sleep creates a future uncluttered by the past. And in that uncluttered space, the quantum field delivers. Not to the ego, but to the soul. Not to the mask, but to the essence. You wake not just rested, but reborn. Not just in body, but in timeline. And with each cycle of sleep, with each release of control, you begin to remember the field is listening. The dream is constructing, and you are not a victim of your unconscious. You are its sculptor. Your mind may forget what your soul knows, but the body never lies. Each morning, your posture, your breath, your subtle tension, they all reveal where your consciousness has wandered. If you rise in heaviness, it is not because sleep failed you. It is because a part of you is still holding the vibration of what was not resolved before the descent. And so the lesson repeats, not as punishment, but as echo. The field always reflects. And your sleep is not the absence of creation. It is the blueprint of it. When you finally understand this, desperation begins to dissolve. No longer do you wake chasing meaning, hoping the day will save you. Instead, you begin to observe with reverence. You notice how the dream bled into the morning, how your silence shaped your mood, how the symbols of the night color the choices of the day. This awareness does not imprison you, it empowers you, because now you are no longer merely reacting to life, you are listening to it. The observer effect does not end when you close your eyes. If anything, it becomes more potent. Because in sleep, resistance fades. The ego releases its grip, the nervous system slows, and your essence, no longer filtered through thought, becomes the tuning fork for the quantum field. This is why intention before sleep is the hidden key to real transformation. Not another affirmation, not another visualization, but a quiet, coherent agreement with your higher self. I am ready to be recalibrated by peace. The field does not respond to noise. It responds to clarity, and clarity is born not from thinking harder, but from aligning deeper. When you are aligned emotionally, when your body feels safe, when your breath is soft and steady, that's when the portal opens. Not to another world, but to the version of this one where you are already whole. You don't travel across galaxies to reach it. You simply match its frequency, and that frequency is love without resistance. This is the secret that got banned. That your power is not in your effort, but in your attention. That sleep is not just repair, it is return. And if you knew where your consciousness truly went at night, you would treat bedtime like temple. You would not doom scroll yourself into a low-frequency trance. You would not sedate your spirit with fear and distraction. You would prepare like a priest before entering the Holy of Holies, because that's what the quantum dream space is. To dream is not to fantasize. It is to interface with your potential. And the more conscious you become of that, the more empowered you are to shift your entire existence without force. Because force is not power. Awareness is. Stillness is. The observer who no longer flinches, who simply sees what is and remains in alignment, is the one who reshapes timelines without lifting a finger. When you were a child, sleep came easily. Because you trusted the night. You believed the unseen was benevolent. The monsters were on the screen, not in the mirror. But over time, fear crept in. Stories hardened into identities. Safety became something to earn, not something you inherently deserved. But the truth never changed. You were always safe in the field. You were always a frequency before you were a form. You were always a creator before you were a character. And you still are. That childlike trust isn't naivety. It's clarity. And the moment you return to it, your dreams become messages again. Your body heals. Your breath deepens. Your mornings shift. Not because the world changed overnight, but because the you who woke up was not the same you who went to bed. This is the sacred death the mystics spoke of. The shedding of the false self each night, so the true self may rise without baggage. So, sleep now with a new kind of reverence. Not as escape, but as communion. Not as silence, but as sacred conversation with the parts of you that still know the truth. The dream does not forget what the ego denies. And if you listen closely, you'll begin to see. It was never random. It was always a map. There is a threshold you cross each night that no one else can witness. A place beyond thoughts, beyond language, where your soul re-enters the deep waters of original being. No name follows you there. No story cling. In this place, you are essence only. A signal without shape, a presence without past. The body may be horizontal and still, but your awareness expands in every direction. It does not vanish. It returns to the frequency it came from. The universe does not sleep, and neither does the part of you that is still one with it. This is not superstition. It is quantum law. In the absence of resistance, energy organizes itself according to coherence. You are not dreaming randomly. You are syncing with an informational field that knows your blueprint, your potential, your highest alignment. And as you release the distortion of the day, the noise of identity and expectation begins to fall away. What remains is pure consciousness, a beacon, a silent prayer pulsing through the void, reshaping your timeline from behind the curtain. Many call this unconscious. But there is nothing unconscious about the sacred recalibration that occurs in the depth of delta waves. Here, the brain becomes unified. Neural circuits fire not in chaos, but in chorus. The heart emits a coherent electromagnetic rhythm. The body's chemistry resets, and in this deep stillness, your consciousness merges with the unseen forces that govern form. This is not imagination. This is the mechanics of miracle, written in biology and frequency. The ego resists what it cannot control, but your soul thrives in what it cannot explain. And it is this surrender, this elegant loosening of the grip, that allows your deeper knowing to come online. You stop being a seeker. You become a receiver. You are no longer chasing meaning. You are hosting it. And the field, always responding to your readiness, begins to collapse wave into matter not by your force, but by your invitation. This is why the most profound healing often happens during sleep. Because the body does not argue. It does not question worth. It does not shame its wounds. It simply listens. It remembers its original design, and in that remembering, systems reset, emotions discharge, cells regenerate, not as a reward, but as a return. The healing was always available. It was your permission that was missing. And the permission comes when you stop identifying as the wound, when you stop worshiping the trauma story, when you realize that healing does not mean fixing what is broken, but remembering what was never broken in the first place. The field knows who you are, without the layer, and it will match that version of you. The moment you begin to sleep as her, or him, or them, the highest expression of your frequency. You are not a dreamer trapped in dreams. You are the architect of vibration. Every emotion you do not process, every truth you do not speak, every belief you refuse to challenge, It shows up in your dreams as architecture, the broken elevator, the locked door, the endless hallway. These are not random. They are your inner structures waiting to be redesigned. And the moment you see them, without fear, they begin to change. Clarity is not found in waking up early and grinding harder. Clarity is born from sleeping in coherence and dreaming in truth. The ones who truly master their lives are not the ones who never sleep, but the ones who sleep aware, who treat the night like a classroom, who wake and record what they've seen, not just in journals but in emotion, in energy, in silence. They do not rush. They integrate. And in this integration, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to control tomorrow because you know it's already been rewritten, not by what you planned, but by how you slept. The day is no longer a burden. It becomes the echo of your most recent frequency. And when you live from this truth, even your challenges feel like conversations with the divine. The dream is not an escape. It is the rehearsal for the reality you are finally ready to receive. And so now you begin to see what was always hidden in plain sight, that every night is a threshold, and every dream is a thread that connects your present to your potential, your memory to your becoming. You are not passively drifting into unconsciousness. You are stepping into the deepest sanctuary of design. The observer that lives within you watches from behind your eyes by day, but it travels far beyond them at night. It sees you not as broken, but as unfolding. This silent observer is not a personality. It does not care for status, story, or success. It exists outside of all that. And yet it is the very force that shapes all of it. For it is your state of being, not your thoughts alone, that determines what materializes. And during sleep, the mask falls. The field reads your essence. And reality responds accordingly. Not tomorrow, but now. Because in the quantum, there is no later. There is only alignment. You were never meant to struggle your way into becoming. You were meant to sleep your way back into truth, not by avoidance, but by attunement. What if you began to trust this nightly ritual, not as a necessity, but as an initiation? To lie down with intention is not passive. It is prophetic. It sends a message to the cosmos. I am ready to release the false self and return to coherence. The universe never ignores that signal. It reveres it. And coherence does not require perfection. It asks only for honesty, a willingness to feel what you've buried, to name what you've denied, to love what you've feared. These energies do not dissolve through suppression. They dissolve through observation, not frantic, but calm, not reactive, but present. The quantum field is like water. It organizes around stillness, not struggle. The more you fight, the more it fragments. The more you soften, the more it flows. Each night is a sacred negotiation between who you've been and who you are becoming. Your breath is the signature. Your emotion is the ink. The page is blank, and your subconscious, if you let it, becomes the writer. It remembers the versions of you who already walk in peace, who already embody purpose, who already live without pretending. These versions are not fiction. They are real, waiting in the field, and sleep is the bridge. When you understand this, your entire relationship with rest transforms. No longer is it escape. It is return. No longer is it delay. It is design. You stop begging the day to give you what you already wrote into the dream. You stop performing for outcomes. You start listening to intuition. You walk with calm knowing, because you realize reality is not reacting to your effort, it is responding to your frequency. And your frequency is not set by what you say aloud. It is set by what you believe in silence. It is sculpted in the moments when no one is watching, when the world falls away, and only you remain, drifting into the deep. That's when the field listens most closely. That's when the codes are written. The timelines align. the healing roots. Not in the noise, in the stillness, in the invisible. So tonight, don't just fall asleep. Return. Return to the source within you that never needed fixing. Return to the vision you once had as a child. Return to the field with reverence, with gratitude, with surrender. And know this, you are not just dreaming. You are designing. You are not just resting. You are remembering. And the version of you who wakes tomorrow is shaped by what you choose to let go of tonight. Reality doesn't shift when you force it. It shifts when you observe differently.